Today I'm going to tell you the story of a secret meeting that decided the fate of a small southern town during the Civil War. Rebecca Harlow discovered 12 powerful men were gathering to determine whether their town would burn its own resources or surrender to Union forces, but the truth was more shocking than they imagined. Please subscribe to our channel and comment where you're listening from. The Burn Order. Elmwood, Tennessee, April 12, 1862. Rebecca Harlow set the lead type with practiced fingers, each letter clicking into place like a soldier falling into formation. The headline would read, "Confederate Forces Request Town Cooperation," a polite euphemism for what was really happening. The door to the Elmwood Gazette office swung open, bringing with it the scent of spring rain and Colonel James Beaumont's imposing presence. The Confederate officer removed his hat, revealing prematurely silver hair above a face too young for its weary expression. "Miss Harlow," he nodded respectfully. "I expected to find your father." Rebecca straightened, smoothing her ink-stained apron. "Father passed 3 weeks ago, Colonel. Pneumonia." "My condolences." Beaumont's surprise seemed genuine. "I was unaware. The Gazette continues under my direction until my brother returns from the front. If he returns," she didn't add. The colonel studied her for At 26, Rebecca had spent 8 years assisting her father with the newspaper, learning every aspect of its operation. Still, a woman editor remained a curiosity, especially in a southern town like Elmwood. "Then I shall present this to you," extended an official-looking document bearing the Confederate seal. "General Beauregard's orders, to be printed in tomorrow's edition." Rebecca scanned the paper, her stomach tightening with each line. The Confederate Army, retreating northward after losses at Shiloh, was implementing a scorched earth policy. All cotton stores, food reserves, and strategic materials in Elmwood were to be destroyed rather than risk their capture by advancing Union forces. "Colonel, this would devastate Elmwood. Our economy is secondary to the Confederate cause, Miss Harlow." His tone remained cordial but firm. "Better to deny these resources to the enemy than preserve them for their use against us." "But winter stores? Cotton waiting for market? That's people's livelihoods. That's war." Beaumont replaced it. "The orders stand. We expect the town's compliance within 48 hours. After he departed, Rebecca sank into her father's chair, the document trembling in her hand. Elmwood had mostly supported secession, sending its young men to fight for the Confederacy, including her own brother Thomas. But destroying their own resources seemed a step beyond patriotism into madness. The bell above the door jingled again. This time it was Mayor Henry Wilson, his round face flushed from hurrying. "Rebecca, have you heard?" He paused, noticing the paper in her hand. "Ah, I see you have. The colonel just left." She held up the document. "They expect me to print this." Wilson lowered his voice, though they were alone. "Judge Caldwell is calling a meeting tonight at his home, the town's leadership, to discuss compliance." The mayor glanced nervously at the door. "To discuss options." Rebecca understood his caution. Even suggesting alternatives to direct Confederate orders could be construed as treason. "Will you print the order?" "I must, mustn't I?" Rebecca set the paper down. "Unless the town decides otherwise." "That's what tonight's meeting will determine." Wilson hesitated. "Your father would have been included." Rebecca caught his meaning immediately. "But I won't be. It's not proper. A lady among the men making decisions that affect my future as theirs." She kept her voice leveled despite her rising indignation. "I own this newspaper, Mayor Wilson. If the town chooses a path other than compliance, you'll need a sympathetic press." Wilson's discomfort. "Judge Caldwell was quite specific at attendance." "Then I won't attend officially." Rebecca's mind was already forming a plan. "But I should be informed of the out to know what I'm to print." After the mayor left, Rebecca completed the day's edition without including the burn order. Tomorrow's paper would carry whatever the compliance resisted. As dusk fell, she changed from her work clothes into a dark blue dress. Practical, but presentable. The Caldwell mansion stood on Elmwood's highest hill, its white columns visible most of the town. Rebecca approached from the rear garden path, knowing the servants' routines from childhood visits with her father. Martha, the elderly kitchen maid, nearly dropped a tray when Rebecca appeared at the back door. "Miss Becky, you gave me a fright." "I'm sorry, Martha." Rebecca offered a conspiratorial smile. "I need to speak with the judge, but I don't want to interrupt his meeting." Martha's expression grew cautious. "He's not seeing visitors tonight." "It's about the newspaper," Rebecca improvised. "Tomorrow's edition." He'll want to approve it given the circumstances. After a moment's hesitation, Martha nodded toward the service corridor. They're in the library. You can wait in the adjoining study. I'll tell him you're here when there's a break. The study connected to the library through a pocket, left slightly ajar. Through it, Rebecca could hear male voice already in heated discussion. She moved closer, notebook and pencil ready. "Gentlemen, order please." Judge Caldwell's authoritative voice rose above the others. "We must approach this methodically." Rebecca positioned herself where she could see through the narrow opening without being observed. The library was illuminated by oil lamps, a crackling fire despite the mild spring evening. 12 men, Elmwood's wealthiest merchants, largest landowners, and elected officials, sat around a large table. Judge Caldwell stood at its head, his tall frame commanding attention. "Colonel Beaumont has presented us with General Beauregard's orders. We must decide Elmwood's response." "What response can there be but compliance?" demanded Edward Thornton's largest. "Defiance is treason." "Is it treason to protect our own interests?" countered Dr. Samuel Green, whose progressive views were tolerated due to his medical. "The Confederacy is asking us to destroy ourselves for the greater cause, Thornton, a cause that's retreating," observed James Miller, who owned the grain mill. "Union forces will be here within weeks, if not days." The divisions became immediately clear to Rebecca. Some men, like Thornton, maintained unwavering Confederate loyalty. Others, like Miller, were weighing practical considerations above ideology. A few, like Dr. Green, seemed to harbor Union sympathies they'd previously kept hidden. "What exactly are our options?" Reverend Thomas Fletcher, his clerical collar stark against his black coat. Judge Caldwell spread his hands on the table. "As I see it, 3. We comply fully with the Confederate orders. We appear to comply while hiding the bulk of our resources, or we refuse and face the consequences from both sides." A heavy silence. Rebecca held her breath, pencil poised above her notebook. "Before we vote," the judge, "we should consider what each option means for Elmwood's future." Rebecca settled in to listen, her heart pounding with the weight of witness. Whatever these 12 men decided tonight would determine not just the fate of her newspaper, but the future of everyone in Elmwood, and she alone, hidden behind a partially open door, would know the full truth of how that decision was made. Divided loyalty. "Elmwood has been loyal to the Confederacy." Edward Thornton's voice rose above the others. "My own son died at Shiloh last. Will his sacrifice mean nothing?" A murmur of sympathy passed through the room. Rebecca pressed her pencil harder against the paper, noting how effectively Thornton had shifted the discussion from practicality to emotion. "No one questions Elmwood's loyalty," Judge Caldwell said carefully, "but we must consider the town's survival." James Miller, the mill owner, leaned forward. "Union forces will be here within 2 weeks. If we burn our resources, what will our people eat? How will we rebuild?" "Better hungry than subjugated," Thornton countered. Dr. Green removed his spectacles. "We should consider surrender." The word fell like a stone into still water. Several men shifted uncomfortably. "Surrender?" Reverend Fletcher's face flushed. "That's treason. It's pragmatism." Green insisted. "The Confederacy is retreating. We can't win this war." Rebecca watched Judge Caldwell's expression remain carefully neutral as the argument intensified. The influential judge had sent 2 sons to fight for the Confederacy, but was known for his practical mind. "What exactly would surrender entail?" asked Hiram Jenkins, the elderly banker. Mayor Wilson cleared his throat. "I've received communications suggesting Union forces would respect private property if we offer no resistance." "Communications?" Thornton's eyes narrowed. "You've been corresponding with the enemy." "Not directly," Wilson backpedaled. "Information has reached me." Rebecca wrote quickly. This revelation could be explosive. The mayor receiving Union communication. "The point," Judge Caldwell interrupted firmly, "is determining what best serves Elmwood's future. Confederacy prevails. We must consider how our actions today will be viewed tomorrow." "And if the Union prevails?" Dr. Green asked quietly. No one answered immediately. Rebecca realized she was witnessing something remarkable. The first public acknowledgement among Elmwood's leadership that the Confederacy was the war. "My cotton warehouse holds over 200 bales," Thornton said. "Everything I own invested there. The Confederate government has promised compensation if we burn it." "Confederate money?" scoffed. "Already worth half its printed value." The meeting divided along increasingly clear lines. Thornton, Reverend Fletcher, and 2 others advocated full compliance with Confederate orders. Dr. Green, Miller, and 3 more favored minimal compliance or outright surrender. Judge Caldwell and the remaining men, including Mayor Wilson, seemed to be searching for middle ground. What if, the judge suggested, we appear to comply while preserving what we can, burn enough to satisfy Colonel Beaumont while hiding the rest? This proposition sparked intense debate. Rebecca's hand cramped from writing so quickly as the men argued over logistics, morality, and consequences. The question becomes, Reverend Fletcher said, who would Colonel Beaumont believe destroyed all our resources? He's no fool. I could certify the destruction, Mayor Will. My word still carries weight. And what of those who disagree with whatever we decide? Miller asked. This meeting represents Elmwood's leadership, but not every citizen. Judge Caldwell sighed. That's why absolute secrecy is essential. We must present a unified decision to the town. Rebecca's breath caught. They planned to announce their decision as unanimous, concealing the deep division she was witnessing. The debate continued another hour before Judge Caldwell called for a vote. 3 options before us: full compliance with Confederate orders, apparent compliance while preserving what we can, or minimal compliance with preparation for surrender. Rebecca counted the raised hands carefully. 5 for partial compliance, the judge's compromise position, 4 for full compliance, 3 for minimal compliance and preparation for surrender. The middle path carries the day, Judge Caldwell announced. We will burn enough cotton, grain, and supplies to satisfy Colonel Beaumont while secretly preserving the bulk of our resources. Thornton's face darkened. I cannot support this deception. Will stand with the majority decision. Elmwood appear you. And how will this deception? Who determines what burns and what does? A committee, Judge Caldwell. 3 men, 1 from each faction of this. Myself, you, and Dr. Green. This compromise seemed to mollify. The meeting began to address logistics, which warehouse would burn, how to create the impression of total compliance, where to hide preserved resources. Rebecca was so engrossed in recording details that she didn't notice the library door opening behind her until a hand grasped her shoulder. Miss, it was the butler, his expression shocked. This area is private. Conversation in the library ceased instantly. Rebecca froze as the pocket door was pulled fully open, revealing her to the 12 startled men. Rebecca Harlow, Judge Caldwell's voice was dangerously quiet. Explain yourself. She stood, clutching her notebook. The people have a right to know how their future is being decided. This is outrageous, Thornton sputtered, spying on a private meeting. Not spying, Rebecca corrected, summoning courage. Reporting. The decisions made here affect everyone in Elmwood. Judge Caldwell is narrow. Give me the notebook. I cannot. The judge stepped forward, towering over her. What you've witnessed tonight could be construed as sensitive to the Confederate cause. Your notes could be dangerous. Only if there's something too hot. Challenged. Dr. Green intervened. Judge, perhaps we should include Miss Harlow rather than antagonize her. The Gazette's cooperation will be essential. The Gazette will print what we tell it to print, Thornton declared. Not while I'm its editor, Rebecca replied. Mayor Wilson sighed. This is precisely the division we hope to avoid. Rebecca surveyed the room. Gentlemen, I understand the need for caution, but secret meetings deciding Elmwood's fate undermine the very values the Confederacy claims to be fighting for. Judge Caldwell studied her for a long moment. Your father would never have approved of such methods. My father believed in truth, Rebecca replied. Even uncomfortable, the silence stretched until Reverend Fletcher broke it. What do you intend to do with those notes, Miss Harlow? It was the question Rebecca had been dreading. She hadn't fully decided her course of action before being discovered. That depends, she answered carefully, on whether this group is willing to be honest with the people of Elmwood. Judge Caldwell exchanged glances with the others. What are you proposing? Transparency, not about every detail, but about the essential truth. That difficult choices lie ahead, and that Elmwood's leadership is divided on the best path forward. Several men began objecting simultaneously, but the judge raised his hand for silence. If we refuse, he asked. Rebecca took. Then tomorrow's Gazette reports everything I've witnessed tonight. It was a bluff, partially. She wasn't certain she would actually publish everything, knowing the danger it might bring to those who had spoken against full Confederate compliance. You would risk the safety of this entire town? Thornton. I'm trying to preserve it, Rebecca countered. Deception may seem easier now, but the truth eventually emerges. When it does, the damage to trust is irreparable. The men exchanged uneasy glances. Rebecca waited, clutching her notebook, aware that her next steps could determine not just her own fate, possibly Elmwood's as well. Printers, ink, and gunpowder. This is blackmail, Thornton declared, his face flushed with anger. This is journalism. Violently, Judge Caldwell raised his hand. Give us the room, Jen. I'd like to speak with Miss Harlow alone. As the others filed out, casting dark glances her way, Rebecca remained standing, her notebook clutched tightly. When only the judge remained, he gestured to a chair. Please sit. Rebecca hesitated. Judge William Caldwell had been her father's friend for 30 years. His weathered face showed more sadness. Your father understood the risk that comes with running a newspaper in wartime. Information can be as dangerous as gunpowder. I'm well aware of that responsibility. Are you? The judge leaned forward. You're proposing to publish that Elmwood's leadership is divided over Confederate orders. Do you understand what that could mean? For those who spoke against full compliance? For their families? Rebecca hadn't considered this fully. I don't intend to name individuals. It doesn't matter. Colonel Beaumont isn't a fool. He'll deduce who said what. Caldwell softened, including my own views. I have 2 sons in Confederate gray. How would they be treated if their father were branded a Southern sympathizer with Union leanings? The weight of her threat began to settle on Rebecca's shoulders. The meeting's details, made public, could endanger men whose only crime trying to protect Elmwood. What do you suggest? She asked finally. Print the burn order as requested. Report our unified decision to comply partially. Present it as protecting essential supplies for the town's survival, not as defiance. Caldwell studied her face. You can still tell the truth, Rebecca, just not all of it. Half-truths are still deceptive. Welcome to war. The judge's expression was grim. No one emerges with clean hands. After a long moment, Rebecca nodded slowly. I'll report the decision without detailing the division, but I won't pretend there was unanimous agreement. Hey, fair enough. Relief crossed Caldwell. And the record of tonight's meeting? Rebecca considered her. I'll keep it safe, in case history needs a more complete accounting someday. Judge Caldwell allowed a small smile. You are your father's daughter. He rose to rejoin the others. One more thing. It would be better if you attended future meetings officially, rather than from behind doors. We need the Gazette's cooperation. When they returned to the library, Rebecca faced 11 wary faces. Gentlemen, Judge Caldwell and I have reached an understanding. Tomorrow's paper will report your decision to comply partially with Confederate orders, presenting it as necessary for town survival. Visible relief passed through the room, though Thornton still eyed her suspicious. And our divisions, Dr. Green, will remain private, assured him, though I won't characterize the decision as unanimous. This compromise seemed to satisfy most present. As the meeting concluded with detailed plans for the partial burning, Rebecca felt the weight of her new role. She was no longer merely reporting events, but helping shape them. Dawn found her at the Gazette office, setting type for the day's edition. The headline read, Town Leaders Respond to Confederate Burn Order, Essential Supplies to be Preserved. The article below detailed the plan approved by Elmwood's Leadership Council to burn sufficient cotton and supplies to demonstrate Confederate loyalty while preserving what the town needed for survival. She made no mention of the heated debate or the vote's close margin. As the printing press churned out the morning edition, Rebecca heard horses outside. Colonel Beaumont dismounted before the Gazette office, 2 Confederate soldiers at his heels. He entered without knocking, the burn order in his hand. I expected to see this in today's edition, Miss Harlow. Rebecca handed him a fresh copy of the paper. It's here, Colonel. Along with the town's implementation. Beaumont scanned the article, his expression darkening. This indicates partial compliance. My orders were explicit. The town will burn significant cotton stores and military useful supplies, Rebecca. But Elmwood cannot destroy food needed for survival. These aren't suggestions, Miss Harlow. They're orders, which the town takes seriously, assured him. Judge Caldwell and Mayor Wilson are already organizing the first burns for this afternoon. You're welcome to inspect them. I understood your brother serves with the 16th Tennessee. The implied threat wasn't subtle. He does. Fighting for the same cause you are, Colonel. Spimedu. Is he? I wonder if he'd recognize that cause in this article. Beaumont tossed the newspaper onto her desk. I'll be watching today's activities carefully, Miss Harlow. If I'm not satisfied with Elmwood's demonstration of loyalty, I'll return with enough men to ensure full compliance. After he left, Rebecca relieved. The morning sunlight caught dust motes swirling from the disturbed paper, and she was struck by how quickly ink on a page could change from mere words to dangerous declaration. By noon, smoke rose from Thornton's cotton warehouse. As agreed, he'd sacrificed 20 bales, enough to create impressive flames while preserving most of his inventory hidden in the old tobacco barns outside town. Rebecca documented the burning, noting Colonel Beaumont's satisfied expression as cotton worth thousands went up in flames. The performance had the desired effect. By evening, Confederate officers reported to their superiors that Elmwood was demonstrating appropriate patriotism. As darkness fell, Rebecca walked to the edge of town, where Dr. Green was organizing wagons. Food supplies are being moved to the limestone caves, informed her quietly. If the colonel returns with reinforcements, we'll claim they were already distributed to families. Will he believe that? He'll have no choice without searching every home in Elmwood. Rebecca nodded, watching men loading sacks of grain onto wagons by lantern. How long until Union forces? A week? 2. There's something you should know. Mayor Wilson didn't just information about Union intention. He's been in direct correspondence with their commanding officer, his wife's cousin, Rebecca inhaled. That's high treason. It's survival. The Confederacy is abandoning Elmwood to defend Nashville. We're on our own. Green squeezed her arm. Be careful what you print, Rebecca. Words have become weapons. On her walk home, Rebecca spotted Judge Caldwell outside the telegraph office, his expression grave as he read a yellow slip paper. Bad news? She asked. Confirmation that Fort Donelson has fallen. He folded the telegram carefully. The Tennessee River is open to Union gunboats. They'll be here sooner than we thought. Does Colonel Beaumont know? Not yet. The operator is sympathetic to our situation. Rebecca understood the implication. Information was being controlled on all sides. What does this mean for our plan? Caldwell sighed heavily. It means we made the right decision. Destroying our resources cause would have been He studied her face in the lamplight. Your father would be proud of your restraint. The paper showed wisdom, not restraint. Discretion. As she continued home through the darkened, Rebecca weighed the tangled loyalties now binding Elmwood's Confederate soldiers believing in their cause, town leaders protecting their community, her own brother fighting for a side she increasingly doubted. The Gazette's next edition would need to navigate these treacherous waters carefully, because Colonel Beaumont was right about one thing. In wartimes, printer's ink could be as dangerous as gunpowder. When the bluecoats came, 3 days after the cotton burning, Rebecca woke to urgent knocking. She opened her door to find Eliza, Dr. Green's housekeeper, breathless on her porch. Miss Rebecca, you're needed at the doctor's. A rider came in wounded. Rebecca dressed quickly. The past days had been tense but quiet. Colonel Beaumont, satisfied with Elmwood's display of Confederate loyalty, had departed with most of his men, leaving only a small detachment to monitor the town. At Dr. Green's surgery, she found a young man barely conscious. On the examination, his butternut-colored uniform was soaked with blood from a bullet wound in his shoulder. Confederate courier? Green explained, cutting away the soldier's jacket. Ambushed on the Nashville road. By whom? Union scouts, the doctor. They're closer than we thought. The wounded man's eyes fluttered open. Message, he mumbled, for Colonel Beaumont. The colonel isn't here. What's the message? Yankees coming in force, less than a day behind me. His eyes focused briefly. Tell people, run. Dr. Green worked to stem the bleeding. This changes everything. We need to call the town council immediately. Within the hour, Elmwood's leadership had reconvened in Judge Caldwell's study. Rebecca attended openly this time, notebook in hand. Union forces will be here by nightfall, Mayor Wilson, having interviewed the courier himself. Colonel Beaumont's detachment isn't equipped to defend the town. They'll retreat and report back, Judge Caldwell concluded, leaving us to face Union occupation or liberation, Dr. Green said quietly. Thornton slammed his fist on the table. Call it what it is, surrender. Call it survival, Miller countered. Rebecca watched the same divisions emerge that had characterized their first meeting, but with greater urgency now that theoretical decisions faced immediate implementation. We agreed on our course, Judge Caldwell reminded them. We've preserved essential supplies. We'll cooperate with whoever controls Elmwood. And what of those who can't be seen cooperate with Yankees, Reverend? Those with sons in Confederate gray? An uncomfortable silence fell. Rebecca realized that some present, those most vocal in Confederate support, might feel compelled to flee before Union forces arrive. Every man must make his own decision, Caldwell, but Elmwood needs stability. Those who can stay should stay. By afternoon, news of the approaching Union forces had spread through town, despite attempts to control the information. The remaining Confederate soldiers prepared for withdrawal, mounting up outside the courthouse. Rebecca approached their lieutenant, a young man scarcely older than herself. "Will you return with reinforcements?" He avoided her. "My orders are to report to Nashville. What happens after that isn't my decision." His evasion told Rebecca everything. Elmwood was being abandoned to its fate. As the Confederates rode south, some of Elmwood's citizens began packing wagons, mostly younger men of fighting age, fearing conscription, and families with sons already serving the Confederacy. Rebecca returned to the Gazette to prepare what might be her most important edition yet. The headline gave her pause. Union forces expected. Town council advises calm. Honesty demanded she report the approaching occupation, but prudence required careful wording. She wrote that the town council had prepared for this contingency and urged citizens to remain in their homes and maintain public order. As she worked, Judge Caldwell entered the office. "The council has prepared a statement for Union officers," he informed her, declaring Elmwood an open town offering no resistance. Rebecca took the document. "We're officially surrendering? We're officially surviving." Caldwell looked suddenly older, the weight of responsibility evident in his features. "I'm entrusting you to print this immediately and ensure it reaches Union commanders. You're not delivering it yourself. I can't be seen doing so. My position requires I maintain a careful neutrality, at least in public." Rebecca understood. As a judge with sons in Confederate service, Caldwell couldn't openly welcome Union forces without compromising his family. Yet, as Elmwood's most respected citizen, his implied cooperation was essential. "I'll make sure they receive it," she promised. By late afternoon, Rebecca had printed both the newspaper and the council statement. She distributed papers throughout town, noting the empty spaces where some shops had closed. Their owners fled southward. As dusk approached, she stood with Dr. Green and Mayor Wilson at the northern edge of town. Dust clouds on the horizon announced the approaching Union column. "Are we doing the right thing?" asked quietly. "We're doing the only thing," Dr. Green replied. "The war's tide has turned in Tennessee. Fighting would only bring destruction. Some will call it collaboration. Some aren't here to make the hard decisions," Mayor Will said bitterly. "They left that to us." The first Union cavalry scouts appeared, approaching cautious. Mayor Wilson stepped forward, white handkerchief raised. Rebecca clutched the council's statement, suddenly aware she was witnessing a moment that would define Elmwood for generations. A Union captain rode forward to meet them. "Are you the town leadership? I'm Mayor Henry Wilson. This is Dr. Samuel Green and Miss Rebecca Harlow of the Elmwood Gazette." The captain's eyebrows rose slightly at Rebecca's introduction, but he remained professional. "Is there Confederate presence in town?" "They withdrew 3 hours ago. Elmwood offers no resistance." Rebecca stepped forward, presenting the council's statement. "Our town leaders have prepared this formal declaration." The captain scanned it quickly. "Very well. We'll establish headquarters at the courthouse. Citizens are to remain in their homes this evening. We'll announce further instructions tomorrow." As Union soldiers began entering Elmwood, Rebecca observed the residents' reactions from windows and porches: fear, resignation, and in some faces, poorly concealed relief. Back at the Gazette, she prepared a special evening edition announcing the occupation and reproducing the council's statement. The doors remained open as she worked, and she was only mildly surprised when the Union captain entered. "Miss Harlow," he introduced himself properly. "Captain James Miller, 6th Ohio Infantry." "What can I do for you, Captain?" "I understand your newspaper holds significant influence here." Rebecca continued setting type. "The Gazette tries to report truth, regardless of which flag flies over Elmwood," an admirable position. Miller studied the printing with interest. "We'll need to establish clear communication. Your assistance would be valuable." "My assistance or my compliance?" Rebecca. "Both, ideally." Miller's frankness was unexpected. "But I'm not here to censor your paper, Miss Harlow. Union policy is to restore normal civilian functions as quickly as possible." Rebecca set down her composing. "Captain Miller, Elmwood has been torn by divided loyalty. Some citizens have fled rather than face occupation. Others secretly welcome your arrival. Most simply want to survive." "And where do you stand, Miss Harlow?" was the question Rebecca had been asking herself for days. "I stand with Elmwood, not with either army." Miller nodded slowly. "Fair enough." As he left, Rebecca returned to her work, the familiar rhythm of the printing press, oddly comforting amid uncertainty. Outside, Union soldiers established guard posts while remaining citizens locked their doors against the strangers now controlling their streets. Judge Caldwell appeared as she finished the evening edition, his expression grim. Thornton and several others have been arrested, reported. The Union found contraband weapons at the cotton warehouse. Will they be charged? Unclear. Captain Miller seems reasonable, but he answers to higher authority. Caldwell picked up a copy of her newspaper. You've reported the situation fairly. I've tried. Rebecca looked out the window to the courthouse, now flying flag. What happens now? We rebuild. We adapt. Caldwell's voice held resignation, but also resolve. And we remember that Elmwood existed before this war and will exist. As night fell, Rebecca distributed the evening edition throughout town. Some doors opened readily. Others remained firmly. At each threshold, she witnessed the small human dramas that great conflicts create. Families divided, loyalties, principles compromised in the name of survival. The secret meeting that had determined Elmwood's fate had done its work. The town had survived its most critical test, relatively intact. But as Rebecca walked home under the watchful eyes of Union sentries, she understood that the hardest part of war wasn't the fighting. It was the living through its aftermath, when neighbors would have to face each other knowing the choices each had made. In her final editorial paragraph, she had written, "Elmwood faces days of adjustment ahead. Let us remember that beneath the uniforms of blue and gray are simply men following orders. Our town's strength lies not in resistance or capitulation, but in preserving our community through the storm of war. When peace finally returns, it is not flags or causes will rebuild our lives, but neighbors standing together." Whether Elmwood would heed those words remained to be seen. But Rebecca had done what her father would have wanted, told as much truth as the circumstances allowed, and offered hope where she could find it.